Machine.
Hi there, it's Claire here, and welcome to Hot Pod Time Machine. This is the podcast where we discuss a decision from our past that changed our future. And I'm very happy to welcome the wonderful, it's Julia Hardy. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, how you doing, Claire? You all right?
I feel like when you're wearing that shirt, you have to start off like this. Like this, like
It's got it's I don't know, some sort of like really old MTV program from somewhere. I don't know. Yeah, probably. I don't know. I love it. It makes me think of like terrible like 90s like vaporwave vibes.
Or Saved by the Bell. Or Saved by the Bell.
Yes.
Which was my favorite 90s thing in the 90s. I loved Saved by the Bell so much. I wanted to live in a not live in a high school in America, but I wanted to be in a high school in America. I loved it.
I think isn't that everyone's like dream to be in an American high school? No?
Yeah, I mean, that was my dream, but when I talk to my American friends, they're like, no, and we didn't have red lockers, and that wasn't what I was just obsessed with like Saved by the Bell. But we're not talking about Saved by the Bell, we're talking about decisions from our past that changed our future. And before we go into your decision that you're about to talk about, I wanted to ask you, when I asked you to do this podcast and you were thinking about decisions, what kinds of decisions came into your brain? What were the first thoughts?
Oh God, the first thing I thought about actually was, which is a bit depressing. It's not the one that I'm going to pick. I remember in the second school I ever went to, I had like a drama class, and there was a teacher there, this woman called Mrs. Moon, if you can believe it. And she basically I clearly had ADHD as a kid or whatever. I was a little bit difficult to kind of rein in, whatever. And I was really good at singing. Then, not now. I used to be really good at singing and stuff like that. And Mrs. Moon always like made me do the choir. She made me like do all the school performances and like stuff like this. And I kept trying to quit, and she was like, "No, you can't quit," and like kept me like focused on it. And I really, really enjoyed it. And basically, she left, and this other teacher. I've been thinking about this so much recently. This other teacher came and took over. And I think because I was quite chatty and sort of slightly disruptive in class, she just decided she didn't like me. And from that point on, made it very clear that she didn't like me. And then when it came to like all the school performances and stuff like that, previously I'd always been like the lead in all the school performances. And when she took over, like I didn't even get like a speaking part, to the point where people were like, why are you not? Like people from the audiences before, all the other teachers, all the other parents, all the other students were like, I don't understand why you don't have a speaking part. It's really weird. And at the time I didn't think anything of it, but everyone kept saying it. And I was like, actually, yeah, that's probably kind of a bit weird. I don't know why like she did that. And yeah. And I think from that point I was like, well, I'm not going to bother anymore. This is quite difficult. I don't want to like be arguing with this woman all the time. So I just kind of quit. And bearing in mind that this was an adult grown woman who'd just taken a dislike to a child. I was like 10 years old. And like, don't get me wrong, I'm sure I was probably like a bit of a handful, but I was also 10. I wasn't like an obnoxious teenager or like past the point of like no return or anything. I was 10. And I think about that a lot because I didn't really sing anymore. And then I never really did any acting or anything like that. And I just quit and never did it. And I often think that if she hadn't left or that specific teacher hadn't come, would I have been doing a completely different career?
Do you think you would have got into performance, like as in acting, singing, that kind of thing then?
I was really into it. But then, yeah, and then I just like went right off it and was like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. And then stopped.
Okay, so, what is that? So you've warmed us up. So what is...
That was the depressing one.
That's the depressing. Okay, now guys, you get your sweetie after, so you got the sweet and the sour. So what do you want to talk about? What is that decision that changed your future?
So this is the most convoluted story you're ever going to hear, and I'm
here for it.
Suggest that you sit down in a chair and get yourself some sort of beverage, because this is the even longer version of how did I get into presenting. It isn't the full version. Okay, so basically, I did a lot of traveling when I was like quite young, like like late teens, on my own. Like went around Asia like quite a lot. I really liked traveling. Didn't really know what I was going to do with my life. Maybe because some teacher like ruined it. I don't know. And
God damn you, Mrs. Moon.
Oh no, Mrs. Moon was the nice one. I can't remember the name of the other teacher.
Mrs.
I don't know. honestly, it's funny, I can't remember her name. And basically I wanted to go traveling and I got this really boring job working for like the local council because I wanted to save up money to go traveling and it paid pretty well and blah, blah, blah. And while I was there, I saw this advert for this is so convoluted, an advert for this competition that was being run by PlayStation. And it was basically to win like a year of freedom, right? And basically what you had to do was audition, send like an audition tape, and then you get picked, and then there were going to be like 4 finalists, and then they would choose like a winner. And basically, I remember going to this audition, and this is how long ago it was. They were like, "Oh, how would you vlog this? What would you do to vlog this?" And it was so early on that I didn't know what the word vlog meant. I had no idea, but like contextually, I just thought they meant something like, how would I film this, or what would I do, right? So I was like, oh, I'd like vlog it a bit like this, and then I'd jump over a thing and be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Or I made some, anyway. And then I got picked for this finalist. It was one of the finalists of this 4. And then basically we spent like a summer. They took us to different events, and we basically made vlogs about all these different events, different things we were doing, like our summer of freedom. And we all each had like a different category anyway, whatever. And then I got really into it and just started making videos about loads of other stuff, like at the same time, one of which was where I dressed up as Batman and went around my local town and just filmed people's reactions, which was sort of, it exists somewhere. It's actually quite funny still. It's really stupid.
I want to see that now. I want to see that.
Oh my God. I need to go into like my parents' house. This is how long ago it is as well. And he's going to my parents' house because I think it's in like a hard drive in their loft. I found one of the recordings the other day, but like the audio doesn't really work. Like this is like, there's something wrong with the codecs. That's how long ago it was. Anyway. And so one of the stupid videos, I kept roping all my mates into doing this, got someone to dress up as Robin. Like there was a whole bunch of stuff we filmed. It was really stupid. But one of them, we decided we wanted to do like a stupid video because my dad used to work from home. He's an electronics engineer. So he always has these like sheds and rooms full of crap, just loads of crap everywhere. So we thought it'd be really funny to pretend, like get my friend Paul to pretend to be like the special effects guy from the Fantastic Four. And I'd do like a fake MTV show where I was like going in and interviewing him, and then we dressed him up in like scuba gear and made him like a Phineas Fogg, like beard and moustache out of cotton wool. We made my friend Andy into the Thing by sticking cornflakes over his face. It was very much this level of stupidity. Pretended to set my mate Dave on fire, all these kind of things. But basically, the video was, hey, my name's Julia. This is MTV behind the camera. We're going to go meet Smithka Lechenze, who's like the special effects guy behind the Fanta. Anyway, this sort of thing. So we made this stupid video.
Sure.
Didn't think anything of it. It was just all part of this stupid, like this summer. Anyway, so I'm slowly getting to the point. It's getting there. It's really close. My friend Paul, Smithka Lechenze, went to the doctor's surgery one day, and he met this guy at the doctor's surgery who was setting up this rock music channel, and they were looking for presenters. So because we'd made this one video, because I'd entered this stupid placemaking competition, I started making silly videos. We'd made the silly MTV video, which was basically me presenting. And then so he met this guy and was like, oh, my friend Julia would be really good at that. Gave this guy my number, and then I met him, auditioned. That was my first presenting job.
Oh my God.
It's so convoluted. But it felt, if I hadn't done it, then I probably would have been doing photography. That's what I studied.
It's wonderfully spaghetti junction. It's so but the thing is, like, I feel like presenting it's a weird thing to, it's not a weird thing to do, but it's a weird thing to get into. I don't know, like I've always like been making things since I was young, like, and like weird. I was doing like before podcasts were even a thing. Me and my brother used to do this so we'd watch episodes of Red Dwarf back in the 90s, and then,
of course, who didn't?
Red Dwarf was incredible, and then we would get our cassette tapes and just record us like talking about the episodes. That's basically a podcast.
Oh my God, you were early days podcasting.
That was an early podcast like that, and I don't even know why. Like, I was quite an introverted child, but I always wanted to talk about things and analyze things and do. Were you like that as well? Are you quite extroverted?
So I mean, yeah, like obnoxiously so almost, but like no, I think my thing was more and the reason why I like presenting is people. Yes. I like people. Mm-hmm. So I like talking to people. I like talking about things with people, but it's always people. Like even in all of the presenting that I've done, from like rock music to video games to all of these different things, the thing that fascinates me most is the human side of it, whether that's within the characters within the game or within the story. Like when I first worked at Rockworld, the thing that struck me, there were lots of people who worked at that channel and they'd always ask about like what's the symbolism of track 3 from album 4, and I was like, music's music, like you like it or you don't. Me deep diving into like the meaning behind it sort of isn't really going to make you like it or not. What I want to know is like, why is that like a really seminal track? Like what happened at that time and what things came together to make that music? Because every single person who's successful or done something with their life has had to sacrifice something, or there has been a story or a moment, or they think in a different way than I do, and I want to understand that, or I want to understand how they've created this thing, because I couldn't create that thing. How would you do it? You could literally put me in a room with the man who wins the annual Shed of the Year award, and I'd be like, sheds, but what kind of shed? What's your dream shed? What if you could have any kind of shed? What would it be? And what's been the most terrifying? Like, I always have a question, basically.
Yes.
I always have a question. And this job is brilliant because I get to pick and choose what all the questions are. And
Yes.
I love that.
The gift of curiosity and the waffle. Like, waffling is an absolute gift. Even though I think for me, waffling really began at an early stage because it was like, I grew up in a very awkward family. So I was like, okay, no one's speaking. I will be the one that speaks now. And so it was just a lot of, I still can't stand when there's a lull. I'm like, well, we'll ask a question now, so let's go, and I'll keep talking and talk. I mean, even in my personal life, if there's a lull, I'm like, I can't do it. I can't deal with this unless it's someone.
It's a really good thing to learn, though. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm with you on that, but it's a really good thing to learn how to just be in a room and not talk. I find it very hard. I find it really, really hard. At one point in my life, I lived in a Burmese refugee camp in the north of Thailand, and it was I feel like that was very much my learning time of like when to shut up, because you're living with people all the time. It's also difficult to communicate because you're both speaking they're speaking their second language, and I'm speaking my only other second language, which is terrible Burmese. So you sort of you can speak kind of less, but also just being in a space with somebody where, because they don't have TV, they don't have like things like that to distract you. You can just like sit in a room and be quiet. I'm not that good at it anymore, but yeah.
How was that for you then? Because you are such a chatterbox and an extrovert. Did that drive you absolutely bloody nuts at first?
No, not at all. I mean, you basically got to know an entire village, which was sort of cool, and like the kids were great. Let me tell you a weird story.
Go for it.
So when I was living out there, my old flatmate Miles used to send me like music magazines so I could read them while I was out there. And I remember some of the kids had come back after school into my hut that I lived in, and I'd left out an episode of Kerrang. You know what I mean?
An episode of Kerrang.
Yeah. I left out an episode of Kerrang, and basically it had Slipknot on the cover, and I remember the kids picking it up and being like, they were like, "Teacher, like, is this real?" And I was like, "Oh, honey, no, Jesus fucking Christ!" I was really glad they asked. Could you imagine if they'd left the house? Because also, like, what's to say that doesn't exist outside of what they know? Like, why would they know that? They don't. How would they not know that?
That's true. Like, because like for us, things like that are like totally normals. In the West, it's just like, yeah, cool. Like, this is a metal band. They exist, and that is it. I just wonder what their little brains must have thought. Like, were they scared of it? Did they fear it? Was that it?
Yeah, no, I think they were quite startled by it, but I'm just really glad that they asked the question. Otherwise, I would have never lived with myself. I also got in loads of trouble as well because I had loads more piercings at that point, and it was the village we were in was with the long neck. It's colloquial sort of term. They're called the Cayenne tribe, right? The women who have the rings on their necks.
I've seen.
So they sell. It's like a tourist village. So they sell a lot of this stuff to tourists that come in, and I'm looking into that. There's pluses and minuses to it. They were allowed a certain amount of freedom versus not. The other Burmese refugees were given kind of nothing. Anyway, point is that they're in this kind of weird semi-human zoo. It's sort of a bit messed up, but not messed up also. But basically, they would sell like these little statues and stuff of or like dolls with like rings on their necks. And one day I came back and they'd pulled apart one of these dolls and taken all the rings off the neck of it. And like, I swear to God, half of my students were going around with fake piercings.
Oh, no.
And I was like, oh man, like the elders of the village are just they're really not gonna be pleased about this, because it's obviously me, like nobody else there. I mean, to be fair, there are KOI there that have like stretched ears, but like it's obviously my influence that's like done this thing. I was like, oh,
but you clearly influenced them in some way, you know, and like, you know, like clearly. But how did they influence you when you returned? Like, how did you feel coming back and entering into society?
So, couple things really changed my mind. So I'd studied photography before going out there, and I remember everyone kept saying like, oh, you must be getting like really good photographs like while you're there.
Yeah.
And you know, got this access and like blah blah blah. And when I was there, I was acutely aware of like, number one, it's sort of like I was saying, it's sort of like this human zoo for tourism. Okay. So there is a degree of exploitation that's happening there anyway. Like, yes, they get a bit more freedom because at this time they couldn't get asylum, right? So they couldn't like have any rights or move. They were basically just stuck in this weird limbo situation in Thailand. But they were given more freedom by being in this human zoo, which is still exploitative, but the other Burmese refugees are just kind of thrown in this big camp and can never leave. And if they leave, they get deported back to Burma. And it's like there are pluses. I was very aware of that being there. And it felt like a double exploitation that I would be there teaching and be like, oh, what can I get out of this at the end? Like, what things can I do? And also, I want to sort of be in the moment and enjoy the time that I spent there and not be thinking, oh, like what would make like a great shot? Like, how can this benefit me? It didn't feel right. And the thing was that when I studied photography, I really wanted to do kind of reportage and that kind of thing, like all the heydays of like, you know, Life and Time magazines. I used to read up about this stuff. I loved it. But this just didn't feel right. So I barely have got like, I've got like a couple of rolls of film maybe from that time, like really nothing. Because it just didn't feel right. So I sort of learned that kind of lesson a little bit from there. I also learned that it was one of the happiest times of my life. I was incredibly happy with basically nothing, because actually once you strip away all of this BS that we really obsess about, if you have a roof over your head, you have food on your table, you have people who you care about, you can spend time with, you're actually very happy. We just get caught up in all these other layers of stuff because it's the capitalist society and they just want to make you unhappy, so you buy a bunch of crap. Yeah, once you strip that back, and don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here like not being completely manipulated by this, you know, by myself at all. I clearly am. This was a long time ago, but I do know that like in my heart sort of like to be true. And I remember I was so unbelievably happy there. And I remember really struggling with coming home, and I said to myself, if I don't come home now, I never will. Like I just won't come back. I just won't come back. So I was like, and part of me wanted to know if I could be successful at something that I wanted to do, if I could have a life that I sort of thought about, although I didn't really know what that was. But I sort of felt like I should really give London a go. And I was like, well, I can always come back here. Yeah. I could always come back. If I really want to, I could always come back. So I came home, and that was a really difficult kind of adjustment to make. But honestly, it was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. It was so funny how quickly you adjust to things. My friend had come out to visit me. I'd somehow convinced one of my most like straight edge, he's not straight edge, but like really, like he doesn't do anything crazy at all, right?
Wow.
Like friends.
What does he
and I
make
convinced him to come out and stay with me. And I'd met up with him in Chiang Mai, and then I'd like traveled with him up to Mae Hong Son, which is near where the village is, and then taken him to the village. And basically within like a couple of nights, he was sleeping in my hut. Now, I had the worst house in the whole village. All the other villages' houses were made of teak. Mine was made of bamboo, which basically means that like it provides zero insulation. Everything can get into it, and if anyone walks around at night, everything shakes. Pillows were basically like kind of rocks. You had to like a mosquito net. I had a snake in the roof. I had this very, very aggressive hornet that would just kept trying to build a nest in what was my wardrobe. It was very annoying, and basically cockroaches everywhere. So you put up the net at night because obviously the most concerning thing is mosquitoes. Anyway, so John's staying over, I've introduced him to a few people in the village. It's nighttime. We go to bed. It's quite loud, obviously. And in the night, he's like, like, and I'm like, it was like, John, it's just the cockroaches. Just leave them alone and they'll go away. And I was just like, this poor guy had basically gone from 0 to 100. Like, it felt quite normal to me because I'd been there quite a while by this point. I was quite used to it. But actually looking back, that must have been a horrific experience for him to like, because there was just nothing like, I'd have to like boil the water to drink the water. Like my shower was basically just like a hose where they like siphoned from part of the river. If you wanted to pee in the middle of the night, oh, this is the best thing. Around my house was a cornfield. So when the corn was really high, if you wanted to go to pee in the middle of the night, you had to walk through a pitch black cornfield.
Oh my god!
Oh my god! It was kind of terrifying. You got used to it, although initially I did just pee off the side of the house for a little bit, and then it really started to smell, and I was like, I need to stop doing that because like everyone's basically like, your house stinks.
Yeah, everyone's like
it's really smelly. It doesn't take long. It took like 3 days, and everyone's like, why are you peeing outside your house?
This girl from the UK, she's the stinky one at the end of the street. Like that's her
basically, yes. Yeah.
And but do you think you could go back to that now? Like, because it's been so long, you've done what you've done, you've got a career, you've got a nice place in London, you've lived in the city, but could you go back?
What, giving everything up and just going and living in the jungle?
Yeah, if you could just do it again, would you do it? Could you do
it? If I thought that I'd got everything that I wanted out of this life, like if I really felt, sometimes I said to myself, if it's like a bit depressing, where I'm like, I could just leave. I could just pack my things and leave. Like, leaving is always an option. You know what I mean? You could just go somewhere else and things are infinitely better sometimes if you just take yourself out of a situation. Like, if it got really bad. But I do think that about a lot. Like, maybe I'll get to a point where maybe I don't want to present anymore. Maybe I don't really want to do this kind of stuff anymore. Maybe it'll like lose its taste. It hasn't yet. I'm surprised it hasn't. But, maybe it will one day. I don't know. Maybe I'll totally change. But I would happily like spend the rest of like my days just living somewhere kind of warm with nice people, great food. And that's it. I don't think when I'm older, I'll need all fancy schmancy stuff and cars and whatever around me. I don't think I'll need that. I think actually I'll be much happier if I just live somewhere else doing something quite simple. I think that would be really nice. That's how kind of I see like my retirement. If I retire at some point, that's what I'll do. Because honestly, it's all nonsense. This is all nonsense, right? You're just chasing your tail. And like, I don't mind it up to a point. But I think if it gets to that point where I'm not getting anything out of it that I want or that makes me feel good or is creatively rewarding, then yeah, I'll sell all this off. I could buy a mansion somewhere else.
You could have the best hut in the village.
Finally!
Can you imagine that?
It was terrible, that hut. It was so bad.
You could have an irrigation system. You could have a toilet.
I could have a toilet in the house and an actual shower and water that I don't have to like strain out all the dirt from the river at the bottom. Like, you only drink the top of the water. Also, woe betide you if you go out drinking and you haven't boiled your water the day before. You then have to drink hot river water with a hangover.
Oh god.
Unbelievably, it's the worst thing that could happen with a hangover. Absolute worst. Hot river water.
Because there's times, right, where I look like there's times where I look at what I'm doing, okay, and I look at my circumstances and I'm happy and I'm lucky and I'm like, cool. But there's a lot about the job or industry or life where I go, this is ridiculous. This is so silly.
It is all ridiculous.
Or I meet people, for the most part, 99% of people are frigging brilliant. Okay, and I actually love everyone that I work with.
Claire, you're going to America.
I know.
It's gonna get so much worse.
For something,
you're going to LA. It's gonna get so much worse. Like, you do realize that. Like, people are crazy here, but like LA, if depending where you are, it could be almost world-endingly terrifying.
I feel like level of doing a couple of years in LA of crazy is going to be good. It's just going to be like, right, okay, do crazy for 2 years, then just see
But
what
are we
happens.
going to come back here and it's going to have turned into America and we're going to have missed the last two vaguely... Actually, what am I saying? There's been no vaguely sensible
There's been no
time.
Yeah.
What am I saying?
Well, this is the
July.
thing. Every part of the world, or the West anyway, is crap. It's going to shit. So everyone that's sort of down in LA and America's like, oh, it's blah blah blah. Especially my father, who was like, Americans are fake, and I was like, okay, Dad, who do you know that's American? And he was like, I don't know any Americans. So why are
Base this off nothing. Okay.
You've based
for
this
you.
of watching television. Like, okay.
I mean, technically they are, because you're basing this off of actors, which means that fundamentally, by the very job of acting, it isn't real. He does understand that, right? That it's...
Oh, but he said, he was like, I would rather you go to Canada. I went, that's good. I'm glad that you would rather we go to Canada. Thank you for telling me.
But how?
Why?
I mean, it's great. Like, don't get me wrong. I would love to move to New York over LA, but like, I mean, it's not really like video games is like super big in New York. I mean, there's some stuff, but like, that's not where it is.
I'm not a big fan of New York. I'm sorry for anyone that listens to this that loves New York, and if you love New York, fine. But I just think that the first time I went to New York, I thought this is like a shit London. Like, and I just...
My God.
I'm sorry.
I mean, it's the block thing as well. When you're like, hey man, I'm from London, I'm gonna places. You're like, yeah, it's 2 blocks up, and you're like, this is fucking 45 minutes.
I know that. Oh, I just love a couple of
streets.
Like, what is? And also, I'm sorry, but if I want to go to Brooklyn and I'm in Queens, I should just have a direct line, right? I had to go into Manhattan and go down and round, and I was like, this doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry. Build a line.
Yeah, but that's like me trying to get to like Crouch End or something. Crouch End. There are bits of London like that where you're like, this is actually not that far, but via transport.
Who's going to Crouch End? I mean, do you know people in Crouch End?
My brother lives there, so I have to turn up once in a while.
Because Crouch End is when I want to go to see someone with a proper life. I don't know,
like with children's and bakeries and buggies and I don't know, like a local Waitrose.
Yeah, MILFs. Yeah, MILFs. Mums I'd like to friend. Just
Okay.
Yeah, MILFs. Still clearly living in the American Pie times, but yes, I just feel.
I don't think anything's really moved on from that. Really, it's called something else, but it's basically the same.
To be honest with you, like I watch films like that, like American Pie and things. Like, when I was a teenager, I loved those films. Then they became highly inappropriate and blah blah blah. And now we're going back round to those things again. It's like cyclical. It's absolutely cyclical. Like, I feel like everything goes round and round and round and round.
Or it's just always there. Just as a constant stream, we just don't see it. I think TikTok has brought out some interesting things.
Dude. Right, okay, I'm gonna...
and like men and their podcasts. Oh yeah.
I was just about to say podcast.
Please tell me your opinions. Oh my God. Oh, what was it? So I was talking about. I did a tweet the other day about like Starfield. I was talking about that whatever guy whose surname I really hope is what I think it means. The guy who was basically moaning about pronouns.
I saw that.
Starfield.
God, mate, come on.
Yeah, like just honestly ridiculous. But it brought out an awful lot of people from the woodwork there, where you sort of think like, my God, it's just like you think that you're like living in a fairly sensible, like none of this affects anyone apart from the person that it affects. I find it absolutely baffling. But yeah, it's TikTok. This was it. The guy had left this comment. He was talking about, we are the silent majority. I was like, silent? You people are the loudest out of everybody. You are the most unsilent of all. Like, if we're looking at a scale of noised silence, you're basically loud as me. You're up here.
I was getting
really loud.
So I'm not on. I do TikTok now and again, but it was Instagram Reels that was serving. The algorithm was serving me at one point, because it knew I was single. It was serving me podcast bros, and the podcast bros, right, just like straight sort of middle class sort of white guys going, or sort of 30s, 40s going, this is why women are vulnerable, and talking about women's
Yes, because of guys like you, literally just you. Men like you, that's why they're vulnerable. The end of the podcast. You can stop talking now. Please shut up. No one wants to hear your opinion.
Oh my God. Exactly. I cannot stand podcast bros. They're like this breed of really strange men. Like, I don't understand.
And it's also, it's deeply toxic because you can see that like more and more of these type of men are becoming like emboldened because they found their little, it all comes back to that whole kind of, I mean, I honestly think this all stems from like, not to dredge up all this stuff, but like way back from like Gamergate and the whole kind of like incel culture and this whole kind of like, honestly, it goes all the way back to there, if you ask me. And it's just, it's so unbelievably toxic. And like, okay, yes, you are entitled to your opinion. You're entitled to your belief and it can be different. Cool. That's cool. You know what? That's fine. I'm not even going to argue with you if that's what you believe. If you really think women's body count is something horrific, great. That's cool. That's your belief. Stop trying to tell me and convince me to believe what you believe. I believe that people who think about that are the worst people, some of the worst people in the world. I'm not going around trying to convince you that they're like the worst people in the world. I'm not directly going to go to the worst people in the world and try and convince them they're the worst people in the world. You have your opinion, fine, but just stop trying to like indoctrinate other people because honestly, women are so vulnerable. Like honestly, what is it like the most preventable cause of death in your 30s is basically you're like most likely to be killed by a partner. Like women are having violent things happen to them all the time, and it was happening before all of this happened. I can only imagine it's getting worse.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, how is it not getting worse with this kind of rhetoric? It's deeply like people think of these. It's honestly, all these people who are trying to get like likes and clicks and votes and all this stuff by being deliberately devil's advocate or just being asses for money, whatever. But like I just don't understand how they don't get that like words have impact. Like it's not, you're not just saying things and like blah 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 and just saying off my opinion. You're actually affecting people's lives by what you say, and actually in a very like damaging and violent way. Like how can you sleep at night knowing like your words have impact? What you put out into the world changes it, you know? And if you're putting these things out there because you know you want to be a friggin' podcast bro, it's like how can you justify that? And the creepy thing where they just terrifyingly just double down into it. And like yeah, I don't know, I just don't understand. I think, you know, I did that blog years and years ago called Misogyny Monday. It's just astounding to me how few men are like aware of what's actually happening. I feel like obviously a lot of time has passed since that blog, and I think men are a lot more aware of what is going on for sure. But the thing that struck me most about doing that was half the time guys were like, yeah, that doesn't happen, and like half the reason for doing it was just to be like, but it does. Let me show you the things that happen. And then, you know, but like it's that kind of blinkered view that they can't see the effect of what their words are.
I know. I don't
get it.
And
sorry, that was quite ranty.
No, it's absolutely fine. I like a rant. The thing as well about social media and all of these podcast bros, and there's also another side. There's all different sides and factions and things. If you have a platform, right, and you're lucky enough to have a platform, an amount of followers or whatever it may be, why don't you just say something positive, use it for good, try and help people, blah blah blah, and then
because you don't, but you don't become popular by doing that.
Exactly,
like,
and that's sad.
But all of social, it's also okay. Let's go down the rabbit hole.
Right, let's go.
It's all
It's all
to do with algorithms and the apps. Like YouTube is designed to keep you watching, so it will deliberately feed you stuff that is contentious and that is of this nature. Yeah. Like instead of, the thing is though, they could have made their own algorithm different. They could have actually designed it to not be like that, but they didn't. They chose to make it that this is how it's going to happen. This is what is going to go on because this is what we want. And that is so deeply disturbing to me. And I think the fact that a lot of the people who are in control of these larger apps that we use every day are deeply aware of this and yet don't care.
No, and
don't want to do anything. And the implications again of all of these things happening are freaking terrifying. Are just terrifying. And yet, oh yeah, let me just go home in my giant mansion and sleep at night with my colossally bosomed wife or whatever. I don't know.
They're sociopaths essentially, like, and it's absolutely mad to me. Absolutely mad. But you're right, like. It's, well, you know, and the thing is, like, we're kind of sleepwalking through it because when the algorithm serves you that stuff, not a lot of people kind of work to change their own algorithm. I had to work to change my algorithm to like, Furbies eating themselves, which was way more pleasurable than Podcast Bros. So my algorithm is, but I had to sit and go, no, and interact with it. But people don't want to interact with this. You're kind of force fed and spoon fed this kind of like thing over and over again.
I was also I saw this other thing the other day that was really, really interesting. Oh, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was a study that they did about propaganda, about how people believe propaganda less if they know that the possibility of propaganda can happen. So they look at things in a different way. So they look at it with like a more like a more kind of an eye to sort of like see and read between the lines. But the problem is with a lot of the content that happens nowadays is that people don't realize that it's propaganda. It's someone's agenda of sorts. I mean, oh no, I'm going towards Cambridge Analytica. I need to stop.
No, we can't.
We can't do that again. We can't do that all over again. No, but like I think, and basically what this study was saying was that people need to be educated about how to better read content and how to better understand content and understand that actually a lot of it is propaganda of sorts by somebody, right? Absolutely. Anyway, oh my God, let's talk about something lighter. Oh God, I've gone down the rabbit hole too much.
Okay, we'll pivot. We're climbing out of the rabbit hole. We found a ladder, and we're just like, it's fine, and we're kind of like climbing up. Like I feel like the rabbit hole was like a little hole in your bamboo hut, and we just fell down it for a little while.
A little bit.
It smells. It smells.
I mean, it's on stilts, so yeah, it's easier to fall down.
We've fallen down, and then we went right down because there was a little hole there, and that was the dugout for the pee, and it smells like pee down there. And it's
no, I just stood on the edge of it and just peed off in the night, like so, just like squat down on the edge of like so outside the hut was like a bit that was just outside the like a ledge.
It's never
so just
comfortable
like,
peeing.
Just crouch off the edge and just pee off. It was nighttime. No one could see it. I mean, they could smell it, but they couldn't see it.
I've got a question for you because you interview folks and things like that. Like what I've sort of found when I'm interviewing people is, generally speaking, I've become very good at reading body language, as you do, and you become very good at reading people, and that's the job, and it's fine.
Yeah.
But like, are there times where you're just like, and this only happened to me twice, and I will not name names, where I've gone, I can't talk to this person, I cannot. What do you do? What are your things that you do to get you out of that? I have to keep waffling.
What, like you can't talk to them in what way? Like they just won't speak.
They're dead ending you. They're just dead ending you. They're like,
oh, okay. Yeah, okay, I'll tell you a story from really early on in my career.
Go on.
I think it's maybe one of my second or third interviews for this rock music channel, Rock World. I was interviewing Queen Adrena, right, this band, and we've gone to like basically this channel used to like film all these live shows, and then we'd interview everyone like after all these live shows, and they'd package it up to like make TV content effectively.
Sure.
Anyway, so we went after the show, and basically it's like the guitarist and the lead singer, the woman who's the lead singer, and she came over with like this massive like cowboy hat thing on, and like these like dark sunglasses. And like I'm interviewing them about like kind of what's going on, and like they're just like, first of all the guitarist is saying nothing, and then she's sort of like, no. God. And I'm starting to, in a panic, turn into Zane Lowe, where where it's like, so like in 1974 when the guitar was first, I don't know, I'm making this up, but like when the guitar was first invented, and then after this time I'm thinking, and then how's the tour going? Like where it's like this really long,
it's the waffle,
like you're just like just saying a bunch of statements of facts and then being like, so how's the tour going? And then they're like, yeah, great. And I'm like, oh. And I can feel all of the crew are like, oh my God. I'm like this because I'm like, this is a fucking disaster. Like, what am I going to do? I was like, I can't believe that they've turned up here. And she's giving such like goth vibes, right? The glasses, the hat, like, and my instant reaction was just like, ego. It's like turning up with ego. Sure. But then like I looked at her hands, and then I looked at her mouth while she was talking, and her mouth was moving in this like really sort of not like slightly quivering kind of way. And I was looking at her hands, and she was just like with her hands, and I was like, oh my God, she's not arrogant. She's fucking terrified. Like she's so nervous. right? And so I was looking and I was like, oh God, okay. And these were back in the day. So these were kind of like one camera-ish sort of like shoot. So it was kind of like a wide shot. But I'm like, oh God, I'm just going to have to grin like an idiot, ask some really like inane questions to start with, and just like nod and smile and nod and just try and make her feel comfortable. It's a really good interview technique, although you do look slightly mad. But if you basically smile and nod, if someone's like really afraid of talking, they tend to speak more because you're like
yes,
like you react. And then they're like, oh, I'm saying something really good. But again, if you're in a wide shot, you look kind of crazy because you're like, it's better if it's like on on them, because then you can just do it off camera and it's fine. But sometimes you just got to take one for the team. So I was doing that, and then gradually they start giving kind of like full sentences and then like, you know, full answers and like all of this. And like, don't get me wrong, at the end of this interview, it wasn't the best interview I've ever done, but it was the first time I ever really thought about conversation as kind of like an art form well, not an art form, but like in a way, like I guess for the job, right? As in like, I need to get them to answer these questions. How am I going to best do that? What's the best way of behaving that I can then bring this out of the person that I'm interviewing? And that was the first time I ever really thought that way about having a conversation. And I do remember afterwards, like the manager had like come over and they were like, what did you say to them? And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, oh, they usually hate interviews and they really love that interview and like blah, blah, blah and all this. And I was like, well, yeah. I mean, if I ever watch it back, it'd be a hot mess. Although my fashion sense at that time was also a total hot mess. But
look, we've all been through it, you know, like
So I mean, every person's different, and you must know this as well, doing like gaming stuff too. So like when I kind of first started doing stuff with gaming, you know, we used to be one of the only like TV channels that would kind of go around filming stuff. Like everything used to just be more kind of written for kind of like it was for like print media, really. So you'd end up like interviewing a lot of people who are just not game devs who haven't had any kind of media training and thrust in their face, and they've got to kind of talk about something. And that used to be like quite unsettling, because also games, like there are NDAs, there's things you can't say, like there's loads of rules. They used to make them learn things to say, and I was like, please don't learn it, it's just going to be a hot mess. Just bullet point it, do something or whatever, right? So and like I think having to interview like thousands of game devs at different point, you learn how to kind of like you're saying, like you learn how to someone's like body language, like see if they're kind of comfortable or not comfortable, and like how to sort of get the best out of them. And like the thing I've always tried most is I remember some presenters I used to work with used to very much be like, here's like my question list, bit of kitchen roll for demonstration purposes, you know, like, and they would read a question and then they'd go like this and go like that. And like, if you want someone to feel comfortable when you interview them, you have to absolutely just make it like a conversation, 100%. As much as you can make it like a conversation. So what I used to do, if I had like really complicated things that I needed to make sure, questions I needed to make sure I was going to hit, I would get like, you know, like little like cue cards, stuff that you do like revision cards on, right? So what I'd do is I would write out the questions in full, so I had them in my head, but then I would write like the keywords, and then what I'd do is, top tip, I would like fold it into like a really small piece of card in my hand, right? Like that. So I'd like palm it in here. So basically I would usually have like a stick mic, I guess, in these kind of environments or whatever. So you'd be doing this, and then I can just do that really quickly and make sure I'm kind of keeping on topic. So basically they don't, and do it when they're kind of talking and like not looking at you. So it looks like you're just having a really, and then also this comes down to question. I'm a planner of questions for flow as well. Like everything has to flow. It's like word maths equations. The reason why it looks really breezy is because I have totally planned. Not that I need to plan all the questions, because I obviously ask a lot of questions that aren't planned. But especially if it's something really important that has to have flow to get to a point, like I really do take time in working out how people are going to respond and how to get from this thing to that thing. And if I need to get here, I need to ask these questions first. It's really boring. If you're not a presenter, this is like utterly dull. But this is all the things that I think about that I can't share with anyone else, because no one else.
I don't really talk about, because like what you're talking about makes sense to me. Because when I'm doing like a panel or whatever it may be, or interviews, the flow, I have the questions, and then I reorder and reorder, then memorize, and I think about the flow. Think about what's the story I'm trying to tell. What's the story we're going to tell today? And then, definitely don't look down at your questions. It's all those things, but you still get despite all of that, sometimes you just get someone that's like, I am just not. Yeah, and it's not nervousness or whatever. There's been
But they don't care about it. Like, I'm a bit of a nerd about this. Like, I really love the art of talking to someone.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
And how you say things and the words you use.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've definitely met presenters who are just like, I'm just going to read like what's there. Cool.
But you know what? Like having seen that up close, and when I speak to like the guests or whatever afterwards, they all know. Like those are the ones that go, I really didn't like that conversation. I don't want to talk to them again. Yeah. You can feel that, I guess. But yeah, the art of conversation is important, and I think that a lot of people think that they can just sort of rock up and just have a conversation. Conversing with people is so hard because we are a ball of personality, emotion. What if you've had a bad day that day? You know, like
yes, how you feel is irrelevant, Claire.
Oh yeah, it's like it's so like it's. Well, I'll tell you this.
Right? I remember once before one of the BAFTAs, I was crying in the taxi on the way there because my dad was really sick. And then I got there and then had to just be like,
you got to get on with it.
Oh, well, I'm just hosting the BAFTAs then. Cool. Yeah. All right, and then and this is the thing, I got really worried that all of the production team thought I was being really arsey because I wasn't like grinning in between things and like being really chatty in between things. It's really weird. It's like being the host of like a slightly psychotic dinner party. Like you're always on. And also if you have like a slightly bad mood, like 1 second, everyone talks about it. And then you're like the difficult one, you know? So I'm like always sort of aware of that. Like you're supposed to be basically just graciously polite to absolutely everybody, which can be knackering because it's one thing just doing it on camera. But when you're there like a whole day, it can be kind of exhausting.
Doing this is really hard all the time. I've given myself jaw ache and neck ache.
You don't have to smile, Claire. Give it up. You're not fooling anyone.
I'm a miserable bastard. I am from Glasgow.
She is. I'm utterly miserable. I've never seen her smile once.
Miserable bastard. That is what
I'm excited for LA for you though. This is gonna be really cool, and I'm gonna come out and annoy. Yeah.
You're moving there too.
Well, that's the plan, but I need to. Still got a few more bits and pieces I need to sort out here. But basically, I'm going to be coming out in October for the first kind of lot of like meetings, meet and greets, whatever. But I'm not quite so as quick as you. I've got things I need to organize before any of that happens. But like getting the flat was sort of part of the America plan. I was like, if I don't buy somewhere, I just won't come back. I just won't, and London's my hometown, right? So I wanted to make sure I had somewhere to come back to. So like getting the flat, which took forever,
that's a good thing. Like I've shed everything. I'm behind this green screen.
Yeah,
boxes, shedding everything, and it's weird what you look at when you're shedding things. Because there's things.
Are you being quite brutal about it though? What are you going to do with everything?
I am now being brutal because even like 6 months ago, 3 months ago, 1 month ago, I was going, oh, I'll keep this thing. Now, like, 2 days ago, I was like, trash it. Like everything is going. Don't wear it. Trash it. Don't look at it. Trash it. Like everything is going. So I'm just up for starting again. Like, and it'll be fun if you're there as well, and you're going to be there for my birthday. So we have to party. It'll be good.
Yes. I'm really excited. Don't worry. I've got I hated LA the first time I went there.
Same.
And that was my first ever like E3. Oh my God, it's horrific. That was 1,000 years ago. It was a horrifically terrifying place. But I think the more I've gone there, the more like, as much as I was joking about it being awful, there are bits of it that are slightly mad, but actually there are lots of very lovely, nice people who also live there. There are nice pockets if you know where to go. So I'm excited to. I just need to figure out what's happening in October. I don't know what's going to happen until I start having all these meetings. So yeah, we're gonna.
Let's cause some chaos in LA.
Oh my God, we totally should.
Yes, I'm so up for that. Anyway, Julia, thank you so much for chatting. We went down the rabbit hole. We came back. We covered a lot.
We went down again. Cambridge Analytica. I don't know how I even got on there.
I don't know how we went from peeing to the rabbit hole, but I mean, maybe I feel that that's fitting. I feel that's, you know.
I mean, I talk about the art of conversation, but I'm also like an absolute sketchy mess of conversation in my normal life. Like it's so everything's so convoluted. I'm very succinct at work, but in my normal life, I guess it's because I have to be really succinct. So like in my normal life, I'm just like blah, 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 blah,
The same. I can
Cambridge
barely
Analytica.
speak in my normal life. Like I barely like if someone gets me in an off day, I'm like like I can't even friggin' speak. I just walk about like, and I never dress in color. All black, don't speak. Like I'm like this. You're looking at a real goth. I'm a real fucking goth, you guys. Goth on the bloody inside. Anyway, for those who are watching on YouTube, thank you for watching. Please subscribe and do all the stuff. Follow Julia. Like, make sure you look at the little description box below. We're gonna put all our socials down there. And please make sure you subscribe on Spotify and all that. This has been Hot Pod Time Machine. I am Claire. This is Julia, and we'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye.
Hot Pod Time Machine.